Banshee, level 21 upgrade. So today I'm going to be installing the 2.5R Traxxas engine into Banshee. This engine is used, but it's in excellent condition and I broke it in myself, so I know that it's going to work great. The engine that's in Banshee right now is old and it just has to go. So let's go ahead and get this one installed. So we have to get the old engine out before we can get the new one in there. So we're going to start off by unplugging the glow plug wire, followed by the fuel line that connects to the carburetor. Just going to yank that out. Then we're going to pull off the air filter. With the air filter out of the way, I can go ahead and unplug the wires for the Easy Start system. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and undo the 2 screws that hold in the exhaust. Then we're going to pull the exhaust out, set that off to the side, and now I need to go ahead and detach the servo arm that works the acceleration. We're just going to use a flathead screwdriver and pop it off. Next up, I need to go ahead and remove the Easy Start system. It's held in with 3 screws. And if you want to make things a little easier for yourself, you can go ahead and take off the back left tire. It's only held on with a single nut. As for the exhaust, you can also make this a little bit easier for yourself if you just go ahead and unplug it and then loosen this screw up. That way you can just move the exhaust out of the way. Once those 3 screws are out of the way, you can go ahead and just tilt this back and forth and pull it backwards. And you want to make sure that you pull out the one-way bearing that fits in here. Now we can finally take out the engine, but in order to do so, we're going to have to remove the engine mount from the chassis, and it's held down with 4 screws. We have one right here, 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 and one tucked away right there. Now we're going to go ahead and tilt the engine that way, and then we're going to pull back and bam! There we have it. Now it's time to go ahead and take everything off this. Okay, so before we do any more, I should go ahead and give a proper warning about the carburetor. With the air filter off, you don't want to get anything in there. In fact, if you really want to be safe, I would say go ahead and just put the air filter back on there. It'll keep things from going in there and messing up your engine, because you really don't want that to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by loosening this nut. Once that nut is loosened, we're going to go ahead and get the carburetor. We're going to tilt it back and forth and pull it on out. And we're going to set that off to the side. Next up, we need to go ahead and take all this off. We're going to start by removing this E-clip. Once you get that E-clip out of the way, you're just going to go ahead and get the bell, pull that off. Then you're going to make sure you get both of the bearings. There's going to be a bearing on the inside and the outside. Set that off to the side. We got the brake shoes, which we're going to go ahead and pull that off. Set that to the side. Now we need to undo this nut. And the best way of doing that is, well, using some pliers and of course a socket wrench. Once you get that off, you're going to go ahead and put this on a hard surface, and with a rubber mallet you're going to go ahead and tap on the flywheel. Then you can go ahead and pull that off, set that off to the side. Then we're going to get a flathead screwdriver. We're going to rotate this around until you see a groove. You're going to stick the flathead screwdriver in there and you're going to turn it to pry it open. You don't want to do it too much, just enough so you can go ahead and pull it off. And there we have the old engine. Only thing we have to do now is take off the brackets. Each bracket is held on with 2 screws. And now we can finally replace it with the 2.5R engine. And as you can see, this thing looks way better condition than this one. The piston and the sleeve in this engine is shot. So I guess I'll hold on to this for spare parts, because the outer pieces to the engine's still in good condition, but overall it's not really a usable engine anymore. So we're going to set that off to the side, and we're going to start off by reinstalling the brackets. Next up, we're going to rotate around to the intake. We're going to use a clean tool and make sure that the groove is in the right position so we can go ahead and reinstall the carburetor. We're just going to go ahead and slide that in position, make sure that it's pushed down all the way, and then we're going to retighten this nut. Now it's time to go ahead and put all that back on. We're going to go ahead and start off with this piece, slide that all the way down, get the flywheel, and yeah, let's go ahead and wipe that off a little bit. All right, much better. We're just going to go ahead and slide that down, and then we're going to go ahead and tighten this nut on. Okay, next up we're going to go ahead and get the shoes, slide those all the way down. Then we're going to make sure that the bearing is on the inside of the bell. We're going to slide that back on, make sure there's a Teflon washer there. Push that all the way down, then we're going to go ahead and reinstall the E-clip. With that taken care of, we can go ahead and put this back on the RC. So we're going to make sure that all the wires are out of the way, as well as the fuel lines. And we're just going to go ahead and slide this right through that hole. And just like before, we're going to tilt it that way while pushing it in. Rotate it down, and then we're going to go ahead and reinstall these 4 screws that hold it down, but we're not going to tighten them all the way down yet. So the reason why you don't want to tighten those 4 screws down yet is that you want to go ahead and get the proper spacing in between the spur gear and the pinion gear. So you're going to push these all the way together, then we're going to feed in the thin piece of paper. Make sure that these are all the way as far as you can. And while in this position, you're going to tighten down those 4 screws. And if you do have the Easy Start system, remember to reattach the ground wire to this screw. So now we can go ahead and pop on the arm that controls the throttle, and then we're going to move back on to the Easy Start. We're just going to make sure that the one-way bearing is still in there, and then we're going to slide that in, and then reinstall the 3 screws that hold it in place. Once that's taken care of, we're going to get the exhaust, slide that back on, and then we're going to reinstall the 2 screws that hold it in. Now we can go ahead and get the fuel line that goes from the top of the gas tank and plug that back into the exhaust. Then we're going to go ahead and flip this around, and you can see that the wires for the Easy Start system need to be plugged back into the motor. And yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pull the air filter back off so I can do this easier. And if you ever need to figure out which wire goes on which wire, there is a positive and negative sign on the motor so you can connect it properly. Now we're going to get the fuel line that comes from the bottom of the fuel tank, and we're going to swing it around the engine and plug it into the carburetor. And of course, now we need to go ahead and reinstall the wire for the glow plug. Put the air filter back on, and last but not least, reattach the tire. Here's before. And here, of course, is after. Besides the whole heatsink looking incredibly good, I have to say I am very excited to have this engine in here. The old one just didn't hold up very well. It was definitely at the end of its life. But now with this engine in here, I'm going to have no problems running this RC. Now, the last thing I should go ahead and mention is that since there is a new engine in there, I should go ahead and put all the needles back at stock setting, which means the high-speed needle is going to be 4 turns out from being screwed all the way down. And then for the low-speed needle, I'm going to make sure that it's flush with the ring that's directly outside of it. But with that being said, I am done. And that was Banshee's level 21 upgrade. Huh, I'm gonna need to make a bigger hole. There we go.